Tonight, the confirmation hearings for Attorney General nominee William Barr wrapping up, and Barr sounded nothing like the man who wrote that now infamous memo criticizing the Mueller probe. We'll take a look at how this all could play out. Then, a freshman Democratic congressman weighs in on the shutdown, the president, and much more. Also, Brexit, it's happening thousands of miles away, but its impact could hit our shores tonight. We'll talk to someone who knows the insides and also the consequences. Evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Thanks a lot for joining us this evening. Now, for the past couple days, the Senate Judiciary Committee, they've been holding confirmation hearings for Attorney General nominee William Barr, and one big theme has emerged. Barr is breaking with the president on just about everything when it comes to the Russia probe. He says it's not a witch hunt. Barr, praising Mueller himself, also had a lot to say about the report that Bob Mueller will issue when he's done. Here's ranking Democrat on that committee, Dianne Feinstein of California, asking that very question.
Will you commit to making any report Mueller produces at the conclusion of his investigation available to Congress and to the public?
As I said in my statement, I am going to make as much information available as I can, consistent with the rules and regulations that are part of the special counsel regulations.
Will you commit to making any report on the obstruction of justice public?
That's the same answer.
Thank you.
And today, Feinstein said that she's leaning towards confirming Barr, but her vote, it hinges on firmer assurances that Barr will make that final Mueller report public. And the smart money, it's saying that Barr, he will breeze through the confirmation vote. Now, even the Washington Post, certainly one of the most frequent targets of the president, says that Barr ought to be confirmed. But the Post also says that Barr needs to keep his pledge to remain independent of the White House influence. Plus, the Times and the Post, they both are reporting that President Trump had 5 meetings with Vladimir Putin, and Trump ordered the interpreter to bury the meeting notes each and every time. Times goes on to say that the mystery surrounding these meetings has certainly drawn the attention of one Bob Mueller. Now, Democrats, they want to subpoena said interpreter. Plus, new court documents about Paul Manafort contain a treasure trove of information about Trump's former campaign chairman. The Washington Post says they detail the lies that Manafort told Mueller, his interactions with the Russians that he shared polling data with, and plenty more yet to be released. As usual, a lot to unpack here. And for that, who else? But we turn to former federal prosecutor and good friend to the program, Roland Riopelle. And Roland, first let's start off with Mr. Barr, in that there seem to be 2 Barrs. One wrote that 19-page memo, and the guy I heard yesterday, and we got more clarity on today, who says, Mueller's, salt to the earth. I'm going to be as transparent as humanly possible. I'm not shutting down anything here. It's not a witch hunt, and on and on and on. Who is the real William Barr, you think?
I think it's the Barr we've heard in the hearings, frankly. I think Trump may have got played here. Remember, Barr is a longtime associate of the Bushes, and they are no particular fan of Trump. And Barr is an institutionalist. He's a guy who will do what's best for the Department of Justice, and he will defend the Department of Justice. So if Trump was appointing Barr because he was hopeful that Barr would do something crazy, that was wrong. He's going to do this job the right way, and he's a huge step up, I think, from Matthew Whitaker in a lot of ways, and he carries a gravitas that Whitaker never could have. So I think he'll be swiftly confirmed, and I think that's a good thing for the country.
And I certainly hope you're right, but my question is, then why the 19-page memo that seemed completely the opposite of the guy I heard yesterday?
I think Barr's a very smart man, and I think he realized that he would have no shot at this job without writing a memo like that. I do think the memo is wrong. I think there have been a number of scholarly analyses of the memo that point out its flaws. And remember, the memo addresses really a very narrow single issue in what is a multiple issue matter. So I think the memo was written to attract Trump's attention and help Barr get his foot in the door. But now, once he's appointed and becomes Attorney General, I think he'll be a very sober and thoughtful public servant.
Now to one of the many revelations this week, and that is to do with the interpreter. And we learned that, as I said, the president not only made sure that there was no records of his conversations with Vladimir Putin, but also reportedly told this interpreter not to convey the content of the conversations with anyone, including members of his own administration. To that end, I only heard this point after the program last night, but it makes a lot of sense. This is blackmail for the Russians, assuming that they held on to, and why wouldn't they, a record of the contents of the conversation the president had with Putin. They know something that our own, theoretically, the president's own administration doesn't even know that was said.
Yes, and I think they have a great deal of strength in terms of being able to use this as leverage over our president by threatening him with what they do know, threatening him with claims about what was said when there's no real record of it. And there's all kinds of ways they can use this situation to push our president around and get him to do what they want him to do. And that's why, frankly, in the more typical case, a record is maintained. And there are witnesses to these meetings. And people's notes are preserved. And, you know, this just, more than anything else, this is just another illustration of the total irresponsibility and incompetence of Trump. He's irresponsible and he's incompetent, and this is another illustration of that, I think.
All presidents certainly have enjoyed and relied on the ability to have confidential conversations with other world leaders, etc. While I certainly want to know the contents of that conversation, and I certainly understand the logic of a subpoena being issued by Congress to put under oath this interpreter to say what happened in those meetings with Putin, are we possibly going down a road we may regret later on where, you know, all of a sudden interpreters are going to be brought in and they're going to basically convey stuff that could either imperil national security or, you know, you want to have off the record ability conversations for a president. Could we someday regret if in fact the interpreter is called to testify?
It's possible because, you know, maybe there's something we'll find out that we really didn't want to know, but that seems kind of unlikely, really, Richard. And this just illustrates why it's so important to follow the protocols. If the protocols for this kind of meeting had been followed, the notes would have gone to the National Security Administration. There would have been other witnesses there who would file memos, classified memos about what happened. And anything that Trump wanted to keep from the public view, it would certainly be kept from the public view, but our trained security professionals would know the facts and be able to react to situations with the full facts in hand. Without that record, our entire government is really hamstrung, and we shouldn't be in that position. It's really an unfortunate thing.
Roland, what did you make of some of the details that have emerged from the prosecutors regarding Manafort and the volume of lies that he told, and also some of the stuff that hasn't been in there? What does that lead you to believe that Mueller has?
I mean, the enormous amount of material that is redacted from the government's submission with respect to Mr. Manafort and his alleged lies sure makes me think that Manafort must have had a lot of very high-level contacts with persons in the Trump administration and Russians. And because a lot of that is still not a matter of public record, Mr. Mueller felt it was important to redact it so that downstream witnesses, whoever they might be, will not know what Manafort has told the government and what Mr. Mueller actually knows. And it sure seems like it must be an awful lot that he knows about Manafort's contacts with high-level Russians, Manafort's contacts with high-level personnel in the Trump administration, including perhaps Trump himself. All these things have been blacked out and it'll be a very interesting day when we finally do get to see them. It does look like there's an awful lot that Mr. Mueller wishes to protect from the public view at this point.
Finally, to use a poker term, you were looking at the congressional calendar, and you think you may have picked up a tell that the Congressional Oversight Committees, they're scheduling some meetings as it relates to, or to bring witnesses in front, for early February, and you don't think that's a coincidence. You think there's a connection with the Mueller probe, at least on the calendar.
Yeah, I think that what this tells us, that they're now putting on a lot of, and I think the Nancy Pelosi move may be telling that to us as well, right? She's now put off, or she's trying to put off, the State of the Union on the ground that, you know, the Secret Service and all the other security agencies are not being paid, and so we shouldn't have the president come down and speak to Congress because it's going to be very hard to make sure that he's safe. We can't pay anybody to look after him. I think the desire to put off the State of the Union and the scheduling of all this testimony in early February kind of indicates to me, I think, that the gossip on Capitol Hill must be that Mr. Mueller is going to release his report at the end of January or possibly very early in February. I think that Congress will want to get going with its hearings right after the report is released, and that's why they've picked February 7th and 8th. I think they believe that the report is going to be released just before then. And that would also explain why Nancy Pelosi wants to put off the State of the Union. She wants to put that off because she thinks that Mr. Mueller is going to put a fork in Mr. Trump right at the end of January. And if she can put off the State of the Union a couple of weeks, Mueller's report will come out before Trump has a chance to address Congress, and that will weaken him politically significantly. I think that's Pelosi's strategy there. So I think the signs, insofar as I can read them, are that the Mueller report is going to come out at the end of this month or very early in February.
Interesting. As always, Roland, appreciate some time. Thank you so much.
Yeah, pleasure to be here with you, Richard.
All right, everybody, when we come back here, as the shutdown grinds on, both sides, well, they're digging in. Democratic Congressman, he joins to discuss where we go from here and whether or not his party is united in this fight.